Alright, I'm going to create a new file, new HTML. This is unit 2. I just put index for now. And we'll put here just array for the title. And I'm going to create another folder here for the JavaScript, just like we did with the other class. So a new folder, just JS. It's pretty common, or you can call it script if you want. Inside my JS folder, I'm going to do right click and create a new JavaScript file. I just always like to call it main. Or you can call it unit 2 JS. It's fine as long as you know where it is, right? So here's my main JavaScript file in here. And we'll put the code in this file, and we just have to add it back to the index file. So if you know to do that, you can go ahead and do that. So we're going to go and add in here on the top of the page, and right below the title, I do a script src for the source and the JS folder / main. And just close that script. So instead of writing our code directly to the body of the document here, we'll use the DOM element to populate the data dynamically. Let's make it a little bit more challenging, more fun. So why don't we go ahead and create a h1, right, for our title. We can give it an ID here. Just say page title, and just like we did the other time, we'll populate this with the inside the JavaScript code. And then we have another one down here, maybe our div. Inside the div, I will create a paragraph P1. We'll give an ID of, we'll just put the message in here for now. So ID of message, and it should be an empty paragraph tag. So that's our DOM tree, right? It's pretty simple. This DOM tree has just, 3 elements: the h1, the div, and the p inside the body. So one thing I wanted to also mention that in the DOM, when we talk about the DOM, there's a lot of types. You have the HDOM, you have the browser DOM, you have the XML DOM tree. So when I say DOM, in this case, it's referring to the HTML DOM tree or the web document. Okay. So the DOM is what you see here. These elements here, and these are called HTML elements. Well, except for this one here. This is not an HTML element, right? These are also a part of the DOM tree, but this is called, it's the 2 terms here I want to put it here. Nodes, okay, and let me just break off here. Let's put it put down here. So there's a thing called nodes. So everything you see here, all these tags are called node or nodes. Okay, a node is any of these objects, any of these tags. It doesn't matter what type. So this is a node, the doc type node, HTML node, head node, meta node, and so on. Right? These are all nodes. And then we have what's called the element. Okay, elements in this case are referring to the HTML element. So these are, this is just like a very general term. This is a very specific term. okay, for a particular group. The reason why I say this is because when we start using the JavaScript to access these DOM trees, there's a difference between a node and a element. So I'll show you why. So there are two major types. This is like, if I want to do it maybe more correctly, I would say a node is like the parent or the general term, and element is actually a part of that, right? So if you think about doing a tree, something like this, will be something like that, right? So element is really a sub class of the node. So you can say that because elements belong to the nodes part, right? So every element in this can also be called a node, okay? But not every node can be called an element, right? Just like if you have a car, I mean, every Mustang is a Ford, but not every Ford is a Mustang, okay? Right? So this is our big umbrella here, which means this is a node. This is not an HTML element. This is HTML element. This is HTML element here. You have like, this is a comment. This is not an HTML element. It's a node. Okay. And what we don't see here are also your invisible characters, like the character return, line feed, and so on. All those are also called nodes. But they're not element, right? They're nodes, and they'll call text node, and you'll see that when we run some examples here. Okay, so now we have, so I have 1, 2, 3, 3 elements in here. So this P is a child of the div, and then the div and the H1 on the children of body, right? So you have the relationship here. So the P is the grandchild of the body, and so on. Okay. So when you access the DOM tree, you can access from the parent down into the grandchild, or if you know exactly which one to access, if it has an ID or a class name, you can access directly without going to the tree this way. It takes so long to get there. It could be like 20 branches deep, right? So if you know the ID, it would go and find it directly and then target that. So that's why if you remember we did in our code, go back to the script now, we always have like the document dot getElementById, and then you get the ID name. Okay, so we have two of them, right? We have the head H1 and then we have the paragraph ID. So why don't we create those two objects in here? And so I want to say, before we do that, if you look in the book, I think like a couple pages in chapter 2, it will tell you about, I forgot what he said. The book says something kind of very, very neat way to say it. But it deals with this function we talked about last week. Okay, it's the window unload. You want to make sure that this window unload is called, is in here, and it's going to wait for the DOM tree to render before you can access any of the DOM elements in the tree. Okay, if you want to access it right away. If not, if you're just going to wait until somebody clicks something, then you don't have to do it. But if you want to run right away, render objects right away, then you want to issue this unload method here, or property. This one here, you can do it in several ways. One is you can say, for example, you can do something like this. This is very common. Init. So it calls an init function, and then you have to create a function here called init, initialization, right? So this could be another clean way to do it. This way is, by doing this way, then this init can be called by other functions too, right? So in here, we could put our target information in here. So we can have like the var h1, I call h1, you call it title, however you want to call it. But usually if it's a h1 tag, I just call it h1. It makes more sense. I'm going to target that h1 tag, and we have the ID, right? Elements by ID, and just make sure you match the spelling here. So if you use the IDE here, if you just find the IDE and find the name, you click on it, or you just tab on it so you get the correct spelling. If you mistype one of those characters, you will not get it. Like, it's usually very common to make this ID as a capital ID here. Because it doesn't give you an error, it doesn't tell you until you run it. So, but usually it has always go by this camel case, so you will know every word. You will always just capitalize that word, the first character. So get element by ID, right, 4 words, and then you will just cap the first character, except the first word here. And the first one is called what did I call mine? I don't remember. Page title it is, right? Page title. So that's that one. You can also do for the paragraph. So var p document, same thing, element by ID, and I call this message. Okay. So I'm going to create another variable. We'll call this one here maybe just data. And we'll create data as an array. So the data will contain both the title and the message you want to output to that page. So instead of storing a single variable, 2 variables, we put in the array, right? So we do the simpler way is just to use the curly the square brackets. Okay, you can put spaces in there. It doesn't really matter. Okay, it doesn't count the space. So the first one will be the title. So I would just say what? JavaScript arrays. That's the title, and the second element would be like just arrays are the best. Kind of agree. So here's my 2 element data. And then the next thing is we just have to populate these 2 tags with those 2 items, right? Remember I do that. So we're gonna use, there are like several ways to do it. Sorry, do what?
I was just asking, did you want to display it in the content?
No. We're gonna display it to the web page, to the DOM tree. So we're gonna display those 2 elements here. The values are gonna be put inside here. Okay, so here would say JavaScript arrays, and then here JS arrays at best. We'll render this page, right? So if you want to see what it looks like, you can save it and run it now. So we can just render next time. So I'm going to go and save both files and click my browser here, and we'll see what it looks like. So here it is. As you can see, there's nothing there. That's what I expected. We'll put on this side, Let me close all of these. So nothing there yet, but the source code will show that I have. So here's my comment in the top, and then here's my tree, nothing there. So that's what I expected. All right. And let me shrink this over here. So now we need to go ahead and the script. I'm going to say h1, I got my data. I just want to change the content, replace the content. And to do that, we use the inner HTML. There are 2 of them. As you can see, there's several of them, right? Inner HTML, inner text, inner height, inner width, and so on. Okay, the text here allows you to place text. You can put text in here if you want, but you want to use the HTML. The text means you're going to put string like text. It doesn't allow like HTML tags and so on, right? So it's really different. So you want to get the HTML, inner HTML, that equals this, right? That first data. So how do you do that? Mm-mm. Yeah. Data. How do I get this? Yeah. 0, right? Okay. So the first element. Right. It's an array. It's an array. Yeah, it's an array. So right. So we want to get the first element out of that, which is the data 0, sub-0. Okay. Yeah, it's the square bracket, not parenthesis. Okay. So the square bracket. If you put paren, it's looking for a function. So that's the first one. So let's just display that there, and then we do the same thing for the p. Equal data be 1 this time, right? You only have those 2. If you put 3, you'll get undefined. And I think that should do it. So if you save it and go back to your browser, if you still save that browser, if not, just run it again and refresh, and you should see that is the one that we get. Okay, so this is the result, the view. So the DOM tree has been generated. So what you see is actually not the actual DOM, not the physical DOM, because the physical DOM is this. This is the physical DOM, right? What's been set does not get changed physically until you physically go into the file and delete them, and they can be done. But in the browser, what you see is the result of a DOM as well. It's a virtual DOM. It's created virtually, and they can be manipulated, it can be changed. But the actual physical DOM, if you do a page source view, you see that the actual physical object is still here, just like the one in source code. That's your source code. Okay, so and so you say, oh, but I want to see what it looks like this, exactly like this. How do you see it? And the only way to see that is by using the browser tool. So the F12 key. The F12 key will show you the DOM under the Elements tab. Okay, under the Elements tab, you see that it has the actual tag with the results in there. Right, we have the results rendered into the DOM tree, whereas you don't get to see that in the source view. So it looks just like if you were to code that manually over here in the document. But JavaScript does it automatically for us behind the scene, so we have a virtual DOM. This or the script?
Yeah, you need to choose main.
Oh, okay. Gotta make it a bit bigger for you. You might have a little typo somewhere.
Yeah.
If it's not displaying, you can, on the browser, just click the F12 key and then press that and go to the console. Anything is, if it's a JavaScript issue, you will see a bunch of red marks or red text right here. Right, for example, if I accidentally just say, if I put, forgot, I put data here instead, right, accidentally, and as you can see, it does not show, but it will tell me what the error is. Okay. Yeah, so if it doesn't have path, that means maybe you have the wrong reference in your HTML, so you might have in the wrong location, right? Yep. So you use that for debugging. So I also want to point this out that you want to make this probably one of your best friends.
What?
Okay, this window unload. Because if you do forget this, then you wonder why your code doesn't work. Okay. And there are several ways to code this. So the way I did here is pretty straightforward, right? Is you just assign a function to that. And notice this is a function, but I didn't put the paren here. I could, but it'll be different. And it's a little bit tricky. So we'll talk about that later when we'll talk about functions. But for now,
Show me again how you got that error report?
error report on your browser.
Yeah.
Press the F12. Or if you do a right click and then the inspect, either one.
I hit F12, I'm not getting it.
F12 and then click on the console. Are you using Chrome or using Firefox?
F12 and then what?
The console.
It's not finding, okay.
Yours could be on the right side. I'm not sure if it's on the right side. If yours is docked on the right side, you should still see the console.
Well, it's saying it can't find my JS file.
Okay, so that's probably what you have. That means that you didn't link it correctly in the script here.
I have exactly what you do. Exactly.
Well, do you have a folder called JS?
Main.js.
No, it'll be
Oh, you need a folder then.
yeah.
That
Do you have
would
a
probably be the problem.
yeah? My
You have to make a
structure.
directory
Oh,
first,
okay.
and name it JS, and then it would work. Well, actually, you have to move the files from that folder.
Yeah, just put it here. You can have it in the same location. It's fine. It doesn't matter where it is. So wherever you store your main JS, you have to link it directly correctly from here. So if it's not in the folder, then you just don't put the JS in front. Okay.
Oh. Okay.
This is just basically for organization purposes.
Okay.
Okay. It could be on the same location, same
Yeah,
direct.
so I put mine in the file.
I still don't get anything.
No. Let's see what you have.